we'll come and we'll babysit polling sites because people have to misbehave if that's what we have to do to protect democracy.
Maricopa County Sheriff Paul Penzone stepped up his policing of 2 ballot drop boxes in the county where voters have filed complaints of harassment and intimidation. 2 men could face charges for brandishing weapons as voters cast their ballots. One of the groups that organized the ballot watchers faces 2 federal lawsuits. These face-offs at drop box is just one of many challenges facing Maricopa County Board Chairman Bill Gates, leader of the board that oversees the county's elections. Welcome back to Square Off.
Thanks for having me.
A lot of people say to me, hey, bet you can't wait for November 8th. It's going to be all over, but it's not going to be all over on November 8th, is it? Not even close.
No, it's not, because of the way that Arizona has structured its elections. So, as you know, we have 80% or more of our voters who vote early. Then you have the rest of them voting on Election Day. So what I can tell the viewers, though, is 98 to 99% of the votes will be counted by Friday of election week.
At the same time, it's as if November 2020 hasn't ended. It's just continued into 2022 and 2024. And the thinking, you know, even a year ago or two was that that was all a dry run for the next few elections. Is that the way you feel?
Well, I think every election stands on its own. I mean, that's the reality.
But in terms of the opponents, the denialism, the rejection of the results.
Yes, before 2020, this concept of denying results, you had a few people who did it out there, quite frankly, on both sides of the aisle. But what we've seen since 2020 is obviously on a level we've never seen, and it's continuing, and it's something that we are dealing with daily at Maricopa County elections.
And I know some viewers are going to say, hang on a second. Right now, this is on the Republican side entirely. No president has ever tried to overturn an election until Donald Trump came along.
Yeah,
and I know you get that.
Yeah, no, I mean, the reality is we've never seen anything like this before. And it's not just questioning, let's say some members of Congress voting not to certify the election, but continuing and taking efforts like the so-called audit that the cyber ninjas did, and so many other things that we're seeing on a daily basis, referencing back to what happened in 2020, continuing to raise questions that have been addressed over and over again.
And it must be exhausting, not just to have to answer those questions, but to continue to ensure that these elections are running properly.
Well, the way I look at it is we're very focused on the 2022 election, but there's nothing more important than protecting the sanctity of the vote in this democratic republic. And if I need to talk about this every day, I'll do it. I don't want to, but I'll do it because there's nothing more important that I've ever worked on as an elected official.
Let's talk about the ballot drop boxes, threats to voters, to your election workers. When these reports of alleged intimidation started coming in, you spoke out very publicly and very quickly about them to say they would not be tolerated. Is that part of the strategy right now to get ahead of problems like that?
Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, we know there are people out there who want to cause problems with this election. I wish it weren't that way, but that's the way it is. So that's, and this really started at the beginning of this year in my chairman's speech. I said we wanted to make this the most transparent election in the history of Maricopa County. And that's what we've done throughout. We're now running weekly press conferences, Stephen Richer and I, and so we got up at that one. We were aware that this intimidation was taking place with elections workers, taking pictures of them at the end of long days and taking pictures of their license plates. We said, this must stop.
How many complaints have you received to date?
I'm not sure on the exact number, but there have been, I would say, more than a handful.
I'm told it's up to 20.
That doesn't surprise me.
Okay. Let's listen now to someone who might be the state's next chief elections officer, far-right Republican State Representative Mark Fincham. Here's what the candidate for Secretary of State, and he's running for that office, here's what he said on Phoenix Radio last Tuesday about vigilantes at ballot drop boxes. Let's listen.
We have individuals who are showing up ballot drop boxes with multiple ballots. And they deployed the media, they deployed the sheriff. Oh, well, we're an open carry state. People can watch those boxes because the county sure as hell isn't. Maricopa County is not monitoring those drop boxes as they're required to.
Mark Fincham is saying that. Is the county monitoring those drop boxes?
We're monitoring the drop boxes. We have a live stream camera on it, so we're monitoring them, and this is absolutely the right of us at Maricopa County to have these outside, and it is also the right of people to observe what's going on. But you reach a point where it becomes voter intimidation. When you have people showing up in tactical gear, in camouflage, when they start calling people who are exercising their right to vote mules, and we're out here mule hunting. Those sorts of things happen. This becomes more and more like intimidation. And that's why we're calling on everyone, let's step back a bit. Let's turn down the temperature and let's focus on exercising our right to vote in a civil way.
And their response would be, hang on, we have a First Amendment right to stand in this public space with a weapon, as Mark Fincham says, open carry state, and do what we want. So are you saying legally it's intimidation, or maybe it should be legally intimidation, but it doesn't appear to be there just yet, because they do have that right?
Absolutely. I'm a strong defender of the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. I'm not saying that people can't exercise those rights. I'm saying when you start to combine all of these things together and you have the military style, you have statements that are made, then we start to near that line and maybe cross the line to voter intimidation. That's why we're encouraging any people who feel intimidated, either at these drop boxes or maybe at one of the vote centers, contact law enforcement, let them get involved, but we don't need vigilantes on either side of the aisle.
And you do have Mark Fincham saying, sure, bring your weapons. Is that a responsible thing for a possible Secretary of State to say?
In my opinion, that's not a responsible way to approach these things. And we know that people have been worked up by the 2,000 mules, a video which has now been thoroughly debunked. So he knows that, you know, he's got an audience that's willing to listen to all of this. But when did this become sort of an accepted approach, that we go to voting places with guns? Are they doing that to go hunting for animals or something? No, they're doing it by definition to intimidate people, to suggest that law enforcement or elections officials can't do their jobs. We can, we've got this covered, and let's let the candidates get back to making their case as to why they would, you know, their case for a bright future for Arizona.
3 months from now, when a new administration takes over at the Capitol, you might have to deal with Mark Fincham as Secretary of State. You also might have to deal with Kari Lake as governor. 2 weeks ago, Kari Lake and Mike Lindell shared the stage at a Phoenix event that featured Christian nationalist speakers. Lindell said he was the first person to mention Lake to former President Donald Trump about a month before she announced her campaign. Let's listen to what Lindell has to say.
I will tell you, she was the first one that I talked to the president about. I go, you know, I don't want to say anything, but this Kari Lake lady, I mean, she is amazing.
Now, Mike Lindell is one of the leading promoters of election lies. He's also paid for Kari Lake's and Mark Fincham's lawsuit against the county to throw out your ballot machines. And he's a mentor of somebody who could become a future governor. Would you be able to work with a Governor Lake advised by a Mike Lindell?
So in our role, helping to lead elections in Maricopa County, along with the recorder, it's our responsibility to work with the governor, the Secretary of State, and the Attorney General in many instances. So we don't have a choice. We have to work with them. And again, whoever wins, we're going to be partners with them in running the 2024 election. But certainly if it's someone who's has a lot of questions about elections, we want to help them to get more educated about it. And my sense is once they've done that, they might have a little different view of elections.
You think you can educate Kari Lake, given everything she said about the elections?
That will be my job and my colleagues' jobs. Again, if we're talking about a situation where she's the duly elected governor and Secretary of State, we must work with them. We don't have a choice. And again, we have some people, unfortunately, in Arizona and around our country who are deciding which laws they want to follow. That's not what we do at the Board of Supervisors. I think if we've done anything, we've shown that. We follow the law, regardless of what impact that may have on us or how people might view us. And that's exactly what we would do if we were working on the 2024 election with Secretary of State Fincham and Governor Lake.
As a Republican voter, Are their views of elections disqualifying for you?
Well, as an elections official, I have made it my policy that I don't talk about who I'm voting for. But again, that particular brand of republicanism is not where I would put myself. And I think it's extremely important that as Republicans, we be talking about those other things that appeal to the broad base of not only Republican voters, but voters across Arizona. And so I really want to see us as a party getting more focused on that and not on, frankly, spreading misinformation about elections.
Got to end it there. Bill Gates, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck on Election Day and thereafter.